Hey, welcome everybody to the Sutta study group. We're going to begin with about 15 minutes of meditation to settle in and to fully arrive and make ourselves ready and receptive for taking in the words of the Buddha. So please be comfortable, and we'll have a silent sit together till about 1:15. I'll ring the gong at the end of the meditation session. So I hope you heard the bell. Someone's message that you didn't. So anyway, we'll conclude the meditation now. And we'll start to look at a sutta together. Welcome again, everyone, to this sutta study group. And all thanks to Venerable Satima, we have this theme of this retreat. Welcome, Venerables, from around your body. We have a theme which is the Satipatthana Sutta. And so how wonderful we get the chance to really explore this sutta in great detail over the next 3 months. And in these sutta study groups, we're looking at the Samyutta Nikaya suttas in the chapter Satipatthana Samyutta. So these are all kind of variations on a theme around the Satipatthana teachings. In the guided meditations on Sunday mornings, we're looking at the different practices that the Buddha describes in the Satipatthana Sutta. And in the Sutta study group, we're looking at Samyutta, Satipatthana, Samyutta. And in the Tuesday evening talks, I will be speaking about passages from the Satipatthana Sutta. So for today, we have a wonderful sutta. I'm going to put it up on the screen. Satipatthana Samyutta is chapter 47 of the Samyutta Nikaya, and I'm not finding it. Yes, I am. Here it is. Here we go. Samyutta 47:9, and it's called sick in English. I want to try and find see if I can get the Pali up as well. I had it all prepared, and for some reason, it's all gone a bit peculiar. Can you help me at all, Tivu, with the... Okay, we're going to go all the way back to the Sutta Central. How we find suttas.
You can actually just search the number.
I want the Pali and the English.
Yeah, so that'll be the settings about how it displays.
And where do we find those?
I think it's upper right. 2 little dots.
Thank you so much. Excuse me, everyone. We're getting there.
Let me try the language.
You need to go to the sutta first.
Okay.
Go to the sutta first, and then go to the top.
Okay. So we're going to the sutta. 5th book of the Samyutta Nikaya, 47th chapter. Here it is. Yes, thank you so much, Venerable Kachina. Thank you, Venerable. We've got it. We just had to start from scratch, sort of thing. Here it is. No.
So now I'll go to the top.
Now go top right.
Okay. I'm so grateful for my support team here.
Well, this is a good lesson for everyone to learn how to navigate this.
Yeah.
So no, not that one. Not that one. Please remove your hand from that menu. Take your hand out of that menu entirely. You're on the wrong menu.
Okay.
Okay, now go where it says parallels. Or sorry, no, views. Go to where it says views.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah. Okay, there you go. View root text with translation. That will give you Pali and Pali English line by line.
Thank you. So this should be a change Pali script. Okay, let's try. So look at that, everybody. This is how we find all these different possible ways of referencing the text. Yay. Thanks, Venerables. Okay, we're here. So now we have, I mean, you may not actually appreciate this very much. I don't know. I think Venerable Kachina might, and the other Venerables, and maybe some of you too, a chance to see the Pali line by line with the English translation. And of course, I'll read the English, but you can also note the Pali, and occasionally we might pick out a Pali word here and there to look at. Let's see. So without any further ado, I shall start reading Gilana Sutta, the Sutta on sickness. And this is a very touching sutta because it gives us a glimpse at the life of the Buddha in his old age. So I have heard. At one time, the Buddha was staying near Vesali, at the little village of Beluva. There, the Buddha addressed the mendicants. Mendicants, please enter the rainy season residence with whatever friends or acquaintances you have around Vesali. I will commence the rainy season residence right here in the little village of Beluva. Yes, sir, the mendicants replied, and they did as the Buddha said. While the Buddha commenced the rainy season residence right there in the little village of Beluva. After the Buddha had commenced the rainy season residence, he fell severely ill, struck by dreadful pains, close to death. But he endured, unbothered, with mindfulness and situational awareness. And here we see this phrase, Sato Sampajano, which is oft repeated, isn't it, in the Satipatthana Sutta. Sati Sampajanya, with mindfulness, and Bhante Sujato translates Sampajano, Jano, as situational awareness. With clear comprehension is the way that Bhikkhu Bodhi translates this word. Sampajano. Pajano, jhano is to know. Pajano is like a sort of emphasis to really know, to know well, to know clearly. Sampajano, sam is another prefix, with, to really bring all the attention to clear comprehension, to clear understanding. Mindfulness plus plus. It's an emphasis, isn't it, on the quality of mindfulness, awareness. So to have this degree of mindfulness, the Buddha, he's sick, he's even on the verge of death, but he's not suffering, he's enduring peacefully. So this is a very good teaching for us, isn't it? And a pointer for us. This is the way that we can relate to sickness, to illness, even to the point of death. If we have this quality well developed of sati sampajanya, sati sampajanya. So the Buddha endured unbothered with mindfulness and situational awareness. Then it occurred to the Buddha, it would not be appropriate for me to become fully extinguished before informing my attendants and taking leave of the mendicant Sangha. To pass away. The Buddha uses this phrase, fully extinguished, which is the translation of Parinibbayayam, Parinibbati. When we pass away, if we have no residue of greed, hatred, or delusion, if there's no unfinished business, then this is the event. Parinibbana. There's a disappearance, there's an extinguishment, it's over. And that is very fine. There's nothing left to hold on to. So it's actually a very interesting way that the Buddha describes his death, his passing, as becoming fully extinguished. However, he's saying this is not the time. I can't do this yet. I can't let go yet because I have to inform my attendants and take leave of the mendicant Sangha. So he continues, why don't I forcefully suppress this illness, stabilize the life force and live on? And this is what he did. Then the Buddha's illness died down. So this is very interesting, that the Buddha could actually suppress the illness, stabilize the life force, and live on. This word for stabilizing the life force, I just want to point out because we see this in other places. The life force, jivata sankhara. The sankhara is like condition, like a formation, isn't it? And jivata, the life formation. So this life formation, what does the Buddha do? Aditaya. He stabilizes it. This word aditana may be familiar to some of us. Determination. We recognize it as one of the parami. When we determine, I'm going to sit and meditate now for an hour or half an hour. We make an aditana, we make a determination, and this is developing this parami, this good quality. And in this case, the Buddha is talking about his determination to maintain and continue jivata sankhara, the life force. So I've said enough. I think I'll stop here for now. Quite a lot of interesting biography of the Buddha, actually, isn't it, here? And just like to invite, if anybody would like to ask questions, make comments, reflect on what we've heard so far. Yes, Ananaya, thank you.
On that last point, as opposed to determination, aditanta, spacing on the intention is what I'm more familiar with. Making the intention, making an intention. I mean, you can be determined to do it too, but it just, one of the things that's been a challenge in studying this for these several years is that there are so many variances. They're saying the same thing, but things are called different stuff by different. You go with one teacher or one sort of school, and they call everything in one set of vocabulary, and then you go to another one, they call it slightly differently. So anyway, I also wondered if we can't alternate between using Bhante Sujato's translations in Bhikkhu Bodhi. I mean, on one, like today we're doing this one, next week maybe we could use the other one, because I really appreciate Bhikkhu Bodhi's, and I'm not always so inclined towards Bhante Sujato's translations. Not that he's wrong or anything like that, it's just, Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ananaya. That's really great. I would love to invite you, because you're so kindly a pretty regular attendee for these sessions. Would you be willing to have a copy of Bhikkhu Bodhi's teachings and refer to that during the session for us?
Well, I would, except when Diane, before she died, passed all of her books to me, but I gave them to the monastery. I mean, not that I didn't want them or think it was great to have them, but they're so huge that just was like, I didn't think at my age now that hauling around large books that weighed 5 pounds was probably the best, since I could get it online. I prefer a book personally. So if you want to give me back my gift,
Yeah.
I'll pick up at least a couple of them anyway. I have the Anguttara hard copy myself, but Majjhima Nikaya is used so often that was one I was thinking, well, maybe I should ask for that one back. So no, I don't mind. I don't mind doing that. We used to do that kind of side by side. Sobhana would often have the book, like Bhikkhu Bodhi's book, alongside. So I don't want to get bogged down in nitpicking over, one word here and another word there. That just totally destroys the flow of the conversation. But so I'm thinking that maybe that's why I'm suggesting maybe you alternate, using one text over another every other week. You know what I mean? Next week,
we could.
This week do Bhante Sujato and get a taste for both of them, because otherwise I think it gets too bogged down in, well, what did this guy say? Oh, what did that guy say? And it just kind of takes away from the conversation. So.
Okay, thanks, Ananaya. I tell you what, we're going to give you back some books. And I'm going to invite you. Yeah, next week I'm going to tell you what I'm doing before I do it, which will be a discipline for me. But I'll give you a sutta, and I'd like you to come and get the books and please have the Bhikkhu Bodhi copy with you and just see. And I'll do the same. I'll also have a Bhikkhu Bodhi copy on my lap here. I think it's wonderful. I agree with you. We don't want to get bogged down in detail too much, but actually to look at the different translations is so valuable, and particularly for these key teachings, to really tease out the meaning. And if anyone else has any other translations that they'd like to bring along to the Sutta group and just be referring to as we read along, because we don't go too fast, to be able to keep up and do that would be so helpful. So this is an invitation for everyone.
Tanisaro Bhikkhu often has good translations as well. So, but I see other members have their hands up, so I'll pass that along. I think one last thing is the thing. Bhante Sujato sometimes, in my sensibilities, is a little too common and too vernacular. You know what I mean? It's like his take on some of the things sounds a little bit too, probably not the way the Buddha said it. I think when the Buddha was alive and giving talks, that his speech was refined as opposed to any coarseness. Although he could do that when he was with certain groups, he could certainly, speak differently. But anyway, that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you so much, Ananaya. It's good to explore these things, and people do tend to have preferences for certain translations. Maybe depends on many factors for us, but one thing for sure is we can have a lot of gratitude and respect for these translators. Why? Because they're bringing the teachings of the Buddha to us in our own language. It's just such a valuable thing, isn't it? And then we can pick and choose and find what works for us. The Buddha, of course, he said he encouraged his disciples to speak on Dhamma in such a way that the people in whatever place, they would understand, they could relate. So to me, this is a kind of an invitation for people to try and actually, find the language that meets the needs. Thank you so much, Ananaya, for bringing this in. And big encouragement to everyone. Look at different translations and bring them along to the Sutta group. What I'll try and do is at the meditation on Sunday, I'll actually announce the sutta for the afternoon to give people time to have a look at any texts that they might have, or have a look online. It's the easiest thing. Look in Sutta Central. There are many different translations, or anywhere else. Plenty of resources out there. And Ananaya, I'm particularly expecting you to be the Bhikkhu Bodhi source for our Sutta study group, please.
Sharanya had her hand up and I think she gave up, so you might.
Oh, okay. Thanks a lot, Ananaya. Sharan, did you want to say something? And then Karina afterwards.
Sure, yeah. And this has nothing to do with translations. I'm too much of a newbie to understand different translations. But I had actually a practice question that I was debating on whether I should ask this morning. So I hear this a lot, right? Sati and Sampajana. So Diane used to always say that Sampajana was clear comprehension, right?
Mhm.
So I'm kind of trying to see how I can kind of try to see more clearly with my own perceptions. So for example, like since I've started hearing the Dhamma, I've started to make slight changes in my speech. So I'm not as quick to pass gossip around. I've noticed I kind of tend to just keep it to myself. But what I've noticed is that in my meditation, I get so caught up in the drama of public figures. So almost as if I'm using that to entertain my mind, since I'm not using stuff in my own life, right? So I guess for me, the question of I wanted to ask is, with the stories that come up in my mind, what would clear comprehension be? Or what would be a way forward in my practice when I'm kind of getting caught up in the stories that are running in my mind? Not necessarily, it could be my own story, the same old story, but also the story that entertains me in the world outside.
Yeah. Thank you, Sharon, for bringing in this question. This is a great question for us to explore. What is Sati Sampajanya? What is it to clearly comprehend in this context? To me, it's very kind of different from what we might at first think. Just in the sense of, to clearly comprehend something, we might think is to study something in depth, to really know a lot of stuff, or to have an intelligence around something that's kind of intellectual, that's kind of in the head, to do with thinking, to do with being clever, maybe, or being educated. And it's none of those things, of course. Sati Sampajanya is much more profound. It's to really clearly comprehend our experience moment to moment. And the Buddha gave us, the 4 satipatthanas, the 4 resorts, or the 4 aspects of experience that we can explore thoroughly. And it is to this that we want to apply clear comprehension, Sati Sampajanya, mindfulness, awareness. So to the body, to the feelings in the body, to the state of mind, and to the mental processes that we experience, the thinking, the concepts, the memories, and so forth. And, so it's almost to me like there's all the experience out there, and then there's that which is experiencing. And the Buddha's asking us to point our energy, our attention away from that which is out there and bring it in, bring it here. And so it's a kind of like a different lens, isn't it? It's a different perspective. And it is the seeing of experience, not the experiencing in terms of being immersed in our experience, lost in our experience, caught up in the flood, caught up in the streams and the currents of experience. No, we're stepping back and we're witnessing and observing, and this with clear comprehension, this knowing. And it's not easy for us to make that kind of distinction, but the way that we can begin to do so is through meditation practice, right? So it's through simplifying, slowing things down, making space, making time to, stop interacting constantly with the world and put it aside. As in the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha says, putting aside covetousness and grief for the world. So we're renouncing the world. We're just stopping for a while, pausing, pressing the pause button. And when we do that, we have the chance, isn't it, to come to the experience of being here and what's actually happening for us. And what is actually happening for us? Well, we can observe it's the four satipatthanas that are apparent, that are our real experience. The body, feelings, mind, and mental phenomena. And so this clear comprehension is something to really kind of contemplate the meaning of, to investigate for ourselves, and to experience it through making time to practice meditation, and then to take that mindfulness that we're developing in our meditation practice and apply that, as I was speaking this morning, to all that we do, to every moment, to every physical experience, to every mental experience. Be the observer, be the knower with clear comprehension. So I don't know if that quite meets your question there, Sharon, but I hope it's a beginning, a helpful pointer. Would you like to say anything, to come back with anything, Sharon?
So I'm thinking of the kilesas that come up in the moment, right? So if I were to bring mindfulness to that, I will recognize that this is unwholesome and kind of watch it, and then watch it change or watch it fade. And then maybe even apply some of the strategies that the Buddha talked about in terms of right thought, right? Segregating it into wholesome and unwholesome. And so all of those things as a way of untangling yourself. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, totally. It's such a wonderful kind of experience, isn't it, to begin to kind of extricate ourselves from being caught up in experience to actually seeing, knowing what's going on. So yeah, we're caught up in a hindrance, and we hear the Buddha's teaching about the 5 hindrances, and we recognize, oh, this is anger, this is aversion. As soon as that happens, we're no longer the angry person, we're observing Dhamma. It's a beautiful thing, isn't it? And we can all do this. And so this potential, this possibility, this is to be developed. Thanks, Sharon. Corinna, please.
Hi. I'm so grateful that question happened right before. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So maybe.
Yeah, thanks.
I'm so grateful that question happened right before my question, because yeah, it clarifies things. So in a sickness situation, that clearly comprehending in mindfulness, would that be? Well, let me say one thing before that. First of all, it's amazing the Buddha could do that. Like, oh well, this is not the right time to die. Let's go ahead and stabilize my life force and pick a different time. That's quite the powerful. But with that said, and I have heard of many people in a way being able to choose a little bit their time of death, just to postpone it a little bit, maybe not quite Buddha style, but so the question is clearly comprehending and mindfulness when you're sick. that means, because when I'm sick and injured, the biggest, almost equally disturbing as the injury or the sickness is my mind and the thoughts of how long will this last? Will I get better? Am I, how is it going to affect my life? Am I ever going to be able to do that again? Just all of that ball mess. And so it seems like just being aware of that, of those thoughts. So I appreciated the question, Sharon, and then your explanation, Aya Brahmavara, as far as like seeing that through the Satipatthanas, and especially when I'm sick, the mind and the thought process is so fearful. And it has been helpful in the past to be aware of those kind of thoughts. I was in a terrible bicycle accident, and then I had to go to occupational therapy regularly. And every time I showed up, they had this questionnaire and the first question was, are you depressed? I'm like, okay, maybe they asked one time, I said no, but like every time I came, they asked the same, are you depressed? Are you depressed? I'm like, no, I'm okay. I'm okay. But it just seems like if your life is turned upside down with illness, that can depression can happen very easily anytime. So you sort of have to keep checking in. So maybe I have another question, but it can wait. They're small little questions. Just any comments on that, if I'm understanding it correctly. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Corinna. Yeah, it's really something to take this in, isn't it? It's a kind of a story, this sutta, really. It's telling us about a particular episode, isn't it, in the Buddha's life? And it's rather matter of fact almost that we're learning that the Buddha made this decision to prolong the life. And I just think that's really interesting and not necessarily that easy to understand. But maybe we have a certain amount of experience of that kind. Like when you get sick and you have to do something, and something in the mind can just sort of say, right, I've still got to do this thing and I'm going to do it. And then afterwards I can collapse. And we're able to do that. Probably anyone who's a parent here would know what I'm talking about. When you've got children, I'm pretty sure people find amazing resources of stamina and energy just to keep going when they have to look after the kids. And then you can, once that's over and you're free, you can actually get, properly sick. And I noticed that I've come across people who've spoken in this way, that again, aditana, that energy, that determination we have, extraordinary power, perhaps. This mind is very powerful. But of course, we can also reflect that at the end of the day, we all have to die. And there's only so much we can do to control these bodies. They have their karma, and sicknesses come and go. And we're not really able to get involved in that process. We can only learn from it and observe it. But I really hear you, Corinna, as well. And I know you've been through this experience of serious injury, serious illness. The mind can be very challenged, right, in these situations. And it's just very interesting for us to contemplate, what would it be like, to have a mind that's not afraid, that there's no possibility, there's no chance for any kind of fear, aversion, desire to come up. So what would that be like? There's a body that's very sick, it's close to death. That's how it is. Like the pictures of the art representations of the Buddha's parinibbana, when he did pass away rather. Parinibbana, extinguishment. And in those pictures, people grieving and mourning and throwing themselves around in powerful emotion. And then others, the arahants, just standing there, looking the same as they always look, presumably, just there, just present, because death is there. It's just part of samsara. It's inevitable, it's normal, it's natural, and so forth. So I guess maybe as we purify our hearts and minds and become more aligned with the Dharma, we may simply be able to follow the process very mindfully with clear comprehension without a lot of strife and turmoil and tumult in the heart. And I'm pretty sure we can all consider, like I was saying this morning, that maybe in the past I would have been very, very afraid, but now maybe not quite so afraid, maybe not quite so troubled by sickness or impending death. And I do believe that we can expect these kind of changes over time with our practice, that we'll notice a more easeful relationship with all the vicissitudes of life, you know, right up to the end. And ideally, we want to be embracing these challenging things, these sort of events, with interest, with curiosity. Like, how can I continue to practice mindfulness? How can I develop my mindfulness in this situation and that situation? Let that be our priority. And then perhaps the physical and mental challenges will be in a context where we're bringing them in as a vehicle for liberation. I think we can all do this. It's a matter of choice. How do I want to live? How do I want to cultivate this mind? What do I want to pay attention to, and with what kind of an attitude? You know, I hope that makes sense, Corinna.
Yes, it very much so. And I just wanted to add, especially with the word aditana, just how much energy it does take when you let your mind go off from being sick, as opposed to being able to direct the energy towards healing. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. That amazing choice. Yeah. And how difficult, yeah, sometimes to actually be able to make that choice, not to be hurtling down the slope of despair and depression. You know, we can have a lot of compassion, can't we, for people who are distressed when the body's sick, suffering, in danger, and how difficult sometimes. But the opportunity's there for us to redirect, really, yeah, with great energy, perhaps with this determination to put mindfulness to the fore. Mindfulness is my priority. Everything else is secondary. And then to allow that to help us to kind of chart our course through the stormy seas. Yeah, thank you so much, Corinna. Kate.
Thank you.
Welcome.
And let me just say that to thank you for this morning's session, and for this one. This is the first time I've joined you, and it's just a delight. And I have the feeling you'll be seeing some more of me.
Oh, wonderful.
My question is back on Sampajana, and the use of this phrase sati sampajana that is used so often, that the Buddha seems to use so often. And my understanding is that the sati part is a little bit different from the sampajana part, and I just want to check my understanding that sati refers to mindfulness with a tone of remembering, of if you like, applying what we remember to this present experience. So applying lessons from the past into this experience, whereas Sampajana is slightly more about present moment awareness. I might say present moment, seeing clearly what is going on in the present moment. And I'm wondering if, first of all, if I'm interpreting that correctly, and secondly, is there ever sati without sampajana, and is there ever sampajana without sati? Because I'm not sure they could be.
That's great, Kate. Thank you very much. You know, these are words, and it's like there are limits to words, but my sense of the word sati is, yes, it means like recollecting. Absolutely. There's that quality of remembering or bringing in a way, all that we know. And so it's quite it has dimensions to it. But at the same time, my sense is that it's something very simple, because when we pay attention, simply pay attention to this mind, to this body, then often it's like it reveals itself. It kind of gives us a perspective that can extend deeply into the mind, so that we might have many kind of, say we're sitting and meditating, practicing mindfulness, we may have many memories coming up. It can be surprising sometimes. Things that I haven't thought about for 50 years will bubble up onto the surface. My sense of the aspect of mindfulness that is the remembering or recollecting aspect is this deepening of awareness that just makes more our experience more accessible to us. Sati, I think of as the awareness, the presence, the being here, quality. And I agree with you that sampajanya, which we can say is something like with clarity, with clear understanding, applying all our intelligence, not just mental intelligence, but all our knowing to this experience of mindfulness. That it does get, I mean, mindfulness develops sampajanya, and sampajanya is an aspect of mindfulness, I would say. And, you know, my sense is these words are very significant. They come again and again in the Satipatthana Sutta and elsewhere. And it's like, why don't we just then, if this is such an important term that the Buddha used to describe this quality, this path factor, you know, samasati, right mindfulness, then it's probably really good to spend time contemplating, what does it mean? What does it mean, and how does it manifest for me? How can I develop this quality? What is the experience of it? How do I develop it? And my sense is, you know, yeah, meditation, of course, and also considering all the other path factors, virtue and, you know, wisdom and right intention and all of these factors, and seeing how they're all part of it too, you know, all these different path factors like the spokes of a wheel come together and nourish each other. So I feel grateful that we have these teachings to really contemplate the words of the Buddha and come to the Pali, look at different translations, just as Ananias so helpfully brought in for us. But then, you know, put it all in the pot, as it were, and then sit with it and contemplate, and let's see what's our experience. I hope that's helpful. And thank you very much, Kate, for joining us. Be great to see more of you, and also for your wonderful comment.
Thank you.
Ananaya.
Just one last quick thing here. I was actually looking through my notes because I've taken a couple of retreats with Bhante Ujjaga, and one of them was on the awakening factors, but specifically on understanding the progression from your initial mindfulness awareness, and then as it goes on and deepen. He has four stages he identifies. Anyway, so I wrote down a note, and I remember the last part very clearly, but I can't find that particular note right this minute. I will keep looking. But he said, so with Sati the Sampajanya part was, okay, you've you've got the mindfulness, and you're guarding your sense doors, and that's developing. But the Sampajanya, the clear comprehension, is that you take the time and you really look at it kind of more in a holistic way, not in an isolated way. And you make the assessment at that point, say you're in a conversation or whatever. And so you make the assessment, is this timely? Because that was a very important part of it. Is it timely? So you're aware of the situation, you're aware of what is happening, the dialogue or whatever, that you're also then having this kind of more holistic look at it and saying, is this the time to say anything? So it's a communication, assessment at that point. And then when that develops further, then you're into true vipassana, where you're gaining insight and you really have peeled it back and up, and that's the point where that's the next step in the progression. So I don't know if that's helpful, but
Thank you so much, Ananea. It's always good to share, teachings that we've heard that relate. I appreciate that. I don't think I need to say anything about that. That's just a very helpful comment. Thank you. I'd like to suggest now we go back to the sutta and take up where we left off with a little bit of a recap. What a rich springboard this sutta is. So just coming back to the Buddha in the Vassa, the rainy season, in the little village of Beluva, becoming very sick, and yet enduring unperturbed, unbothered, with mindfulness and situational awareness, with sati sampajanya, deciding it would not be appropriate to become fully extinguished before informing my attendants and taking leave of the Sangha. And so forcefully suppressing the illness, stabilizing the life force, the Buddha lived on, and his illness died down. Soon after the Buddha had recovered from that sickness, he left his dwelling and sat in the shade of the porch on a seat spread out. Then Venerable Ananda went up to the Buddha, bowed, sat down to one side, and said to him, so we all know that Ananda is the cousin of the Buddha, who was his faithful attendant or upatak for many, many years. He said to the Buddha, sir, it's fantastic that the Buddha is comfortable and that he's all right, he's well. Because when the Buddha was sick, my body felt like it was drugged. I was disorientated and the teachings didn't spring to mind. Still, at least I was consoled by the thought that the Buddha won't become fully extinguished without making some statement regarding the Sangha of mendicants. So that's interesting, isn't it? We're hearing that Ananda was very perturbed by the Buddha's illness. Ananda was not a fully liberated person. He was still subject to desire and aversion and confusion. And so he was quite upset, and his mind was confused, and he felt as if he was drugged, and he couldn't bring up the teachings to console himself, to guide him through this difficulty. And it just brings back Corinna's comments and reflections for us that, we can know from others, or even for ourselves, if we've been very sick, just how challenging it can be for the mind. And in this case, also those who are close to us, who are dear to us, when they become grievously ill, when they're in danger, how it affects our minds. So Ananda was struggling, but he had the idea, he had the conviction really that the Buddha can't go. He won't go at this point. There would have to be some kind of announcement or some other processes that need to happen first. I think we again and again in the suttas, we get the impression that Ananda was so close to the Buddha. He really knew and understood many things that he could be a great support and a help to the Buddha and a great intermediary between the Buddha and other people. So let's resume our reading of this sutta. The Buddha replies to Ananda. Excuse me. He says, "But what could the mendicant Sangha expect from me now, Ananda? I've taught the Dharma without making any distinction between secret and public teachings. The realized one does not have the closed fist of a teacher when it comes to the teachings." So this reminds me actually of our sutta study last week, where you might remember we learned that the Satipatthana Sutta teachings are for beginners, are for those who are practicing the path, who've been practicing for many years, and it's also for those who have come to the end of the path. The full resource, the mindfulness practice, is exactly the same. There's no distinction. We may have different experiences, our understandings may differ, but the actual practice is not any different. There's no secret teachings, there's no higher teachings, there's no esoteric teachings, there's no initiations. In the words of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha are for everyone. And again, the sense is that they are open, they are available, they're here for us. We don't have to jump through hoops. We don't have to have any kind of intermediaries, actually. The teachings are here and there's nothing kept back. So this for me is a very beautiful little passage where the Buddha's saying this. There's no closed fist. It's an open hand. There's an open invitation here. Corinna.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. It just, it reminds me of his time and how at the same time there was the Brahmanical culture, is that how you say it? Where there was not an open hand, and it was very much about only special people got the teachings or certain people got the teachings. It was, so it's really, it's not just like a nice thing, oh, it's open teachings. It's significant, especially if you look at it in context of when the Buddha was alive, I think.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Corinna. I agree. It's something very refreshing about the Buddha's teachings, actually, and about the Sangha life also. I mean, our community, in the Buddhist community, actually there's no hierarchy. There's no organization. There's no ecclesiastical authorities that the Buddha stipulated. Not at all. The Buddha gave each one of us the agency, the autonomy. The teachings are here for you. And in the Sangha, for the nuns and monks, it is remarkable, actually, the Vinaya structure, that it is this kind of mutual support network, if you like. It's kind of, you could say, democratic. The way we make decisions, the way we operate, ideally and properly, is very empowering of each person within the Sangha. And the Buddha again and again emphasized, didn't he, that we need to be, we can be independent in the Dharma teachings. They're here for each one of us. And it's up to each one of us to put them into practice. So this is actually very empowering. And yeah, I just love that. Here we're hearing from the Buddha something different, Karina, yes, perhaps from the many spiritual teachings in his day, that there's nothing hidden here. Yeah, there's nothing obscure. It's all open and available for each one of us. So lovely. Let's return to the sutta. And the Buddha says, if there's anyone who thinks, I'll take charge of the Sangha of mendicants, or the Sangha of mendicants is meant for me, let them make a statement regarding the Sangha. The realized one doesn't think like this. So why should he make some statement regarding the Sangha? So again, this is just worth pausing, because, my goodness, the Buddha is renouncing any kind of authority. It's really something to take in. Here he is, the teacher, the leader. Our human nature, or our unenlightened nature, we often like to create figures of authority, don't we? And to give our power away, to rely on them. Look at all the religions, with all respect. Many religions are asking us to give our agency away to the priest, to God, to the higher power, to have faith in certain things, but not to think too much or to investigate too much, just to accept our place in the scheme of things. Well, the Buddha here, leader in a way of this whole Dhamma Sangha in his day, in his own lifetime, many, many followers, thousands of followers, lay and monastic. And he's saying, I have nothing to say about the Sangha. I'm not an authority. He's really saying I'm not a worldly authority, isn't he? Because he's an authoritative teacher. He's teaching the Dharma, but he's not a leader in the sense that we may. Ananda was trying to get him to take up that role, to be that. And the Buddha's here telling us something very important, I think. There's much to contemplate here. Let's continue. The Buddha says, now I am old, elderly, and senior. I'm advanced in years and have reached the final stage of life. I'm currently 80 years old. Just as a decrepit cart keeps going by relying on straps, in the same way, the realized one's body keeps going by relying on straps, or so you'd think. This very touching image, which I'm sure is familiar to many of us, where the Buddha compares himself to an old cart held together by bits of leather, thongs, and bits of rope. Very touching. In other places, he talks about this very shaky vehicle now. Very difficult to maneuver around, a burden that he's carrying. Can we relate to that? Those of us who are a little bit older perhaps can relate very well to that. People taking lots of medicines to keep them going, perhaps with various supports, physical supports, isn't it? As we get older, we have medicines, we have walking sticks and frames and all sorts of appliances, perhaps in our homes, to enable us to get about. And it's all very poignant, isn't it? And then the teeth fall out one by one, and the eyesight goes, and the hearing aids have to be put in, and so forth. Like a cart held together with straps. Not easy to bear. So this was also the Buddha's experience. He also had an aging body. In his day, I guess he was probably very elderly indeed at 80. So everything was a struggle. Let's go back to the sutta. Sometimes, he said, the Buddha went on, sometimes the realized one, not focusing on any signs, and with the cessation of certain feelings, enters and remains in the signless immersion of the heart. Only then does the realized one's body become more comfortable. So the Buddha practicing meditation. How many of us experience when we meditate an easing of physical difficulties? It may not be that pain goes away, but there can be a different relationship with that pain. Any comments, reflections on this?
I'm trying to put my hand up. Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So when I find that pain is actually an obstacle to meditation, but it sounds like that was the reverse for the Buddha. So that's interesting that he uses meditation as a tool to cope with pain. And it's interesting because for me, it takes away from trying to get to a more stable state of mind.
Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, it's, something to investigate. Where we have pain, our inclination would be maybe quite naturally, first of all, to go somewhere else, as it were, to distract ourselves or to focus our attention on something else, or to take a painkiller, something to just get rid of it for us. And yet, and I agree with you, it can be that we try meditation and feel, really, this is very difficult because I don't have any other object to pay attention to right now. There's just this pain. It's very predominant for me. But this is a place to continue investigating, because if we can learn to sit with pain, to allow, to open our attention, our mindfulness to painful feeling, we can begin then to find ways of shifting our attitude towards it. So what we're really observing is unpleasant feeling and aversion. And when we truly allow ourselves to be present for these experiences, then of course they have a chance to change and different things can reveal themselves, but it's quite a journey. I think here the Buddha's talking about samadhi practice, so the ability to really focus and enter into great stillness of heart, of mind. And this is something we all want to develop in our practice, to develop the ability to really pay attention in a very sustained way and to become one-pointed in our mindfulness. And there is, there are dimensions of peace and well-being that are available to us as we develop in this way. So it's like mindfulness practice and also samadhi, concentration or stillness or focus, is something to develop in our meditation. It's a way of developing the mind that enables us to kind of really cut through a lot of more gross or more intense feelings, and to kind of divide and dissect them and investigate more and more deeply, and to see that within pain there's so much more to be understood. So it's almost like diving into the difficult places is something to be done, rather than trying to get away from them. But this is a big topic. Good just to touch on it briefly. Thank you very much. And Anania's got a hand up.
Well, as I am an older person, fortunately, I'm not afflicted with severe pain. I do have things that go on periodically, and when that happens, the only thing that, thankfully for practice, is to just be able to, if it's starting to, really be bothersome, to just really pay attention to the discomfort, start, really focus on breathing, staying focused on a breathing through it. And then sometimes I do metta as part of that also, just to not keep, not focus on the pain itself so much. Well, sometimes you focus on it and it does begin to dissipate. It kind of depends sometimes what the overall state is, of course, but that it will dissipate. Other times it's a matter of being able to breathe through it and endure it until it passes. So yeah, I mean, now if you're sitting, if you were trying to do, I'm not developed enough to sit there and switch into jhana. There probably are people who can do that, and if they can remove themselves and move outside of it and keep a stable mind. But even aside from that, I find it does help to get through it, and then to sit in quote unquote formal meditation, or sit on the cushion, do the whatever and whatnot. But in the middle of it, those are the things that work for me.
Sadhu. Thank you so much, Anane. That's really helpful advice. And I also find many times people say the breath awareness is so soothing and so helpful. So we can focus on painful areas, or we can actually, and this is a really important point, so thank you, because we can actually redirect our attention. So we're not focusing just on the pain and the strong feelings in certain parts of the body, but we can actually go to some other part of the body, of course, and to pay attention to the breath. There's no pain in the breath, and we can really, we're still present, we're still aware of the body, we're just enabling ourselves to stay present without being overwhelmed. So that's a really helpful point. Did you want to say something else?
Ajahn Suchito very much recommends for severe pain is focus on another part of the body. Put your attention on another part of the body, the part that works, and move away from focusing on the part that isn't working presently.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. And I know people will sometimes say, oh, go to the hands, go to the palms of the hands, or to the feet, or to the top of the head. And that's quite interesting. All these extremities, it's almost like an invitation, for the energy to come out. But actually that really works very well, because the feeling in those parts of the body is often quite pain-free. Not always, of course, but to pick an area that's not painful and to just get really tuned into the subtle sensations that are there. So a real redirecting of the attention. I would say both are valuable, both to pay attention elsewhere and also to come back from time to time and investigate painful areas, but just knowing, when the time's right, to learning when it's right, when it's good for the heart to move away from that and come back to something more neutral. Yeah, thank you, Anane. That's a really important point there that you've raised. Corinna, yeah.
Yeah, I have an interesting. I want to bring in the scientific perspective a little bit. That's a great question as far as have you felt pain lessen in the meditation? And of course, I'm a strong advocate. Do as much as you can to lessen physical pain, but sometimes there's nothing we can do. And my experience has been that so the way pain signals work, and they're still studying this, but my experience has been that the stiller I get, and I mean physically too, and like nervous system wise, if there's a stimuli that stimulates your nerve and it says pain, 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 the signals go to your brain and it's like, oh, pain, pain, pain. But then eventually it gets tired of hearing the same message again and again. And so your brain actually kind of tunes it out. So it's almost, I can feel that in my meditation. It's a little bit of patience. And even though something is painful, but then I get so still, like physically, like not moving. Because if you move a little, then that's a different stimulation. It's your body can sense the slightest angle. So if you don't move, and it's the kind of pain you can endure, I can almost watch it like lessen to the point where it goes away. And then I come out of the meditation, I'm like, oh, there it is again. So there's also just like that gives me confidence to sort of, when there's nothing I can do about it, and I'm not going to injure myself further by staying in the meditation, then I have the patience to sort of endure it, because I know my own biology is helping me out, saying, okay, the pain is there. I'll stop telling you about it.
There is mercy, isn't there? That is really good to hear. And we can all investigate that and see how we can recognize that aspect of our physical experience. Brilliant. Thank you, Corinna. Okay, let's go back to the sutta because time's nearly up. And I'd like to come to the wonderful conclusion together. So the Buddha says, Ananda, live as your own island, your own refuge, with no other refuge. Let the teaching be your island and your refuge, with no other refuge, the Dhamma. Let the Dhamma be your island and your refuge, with no other refuge. We don't need any other refuge. How do we do this? We meditate, observing an aspect of the body, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of aversion and desire for the world. We meditate, observing an aspect of feelings, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of desire and aversion for the world. We meditate, observing an aspect of mind, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of desire and aversion for the world. And we meditate, observing an aspect of Dhamma, of principles, of phenomena, keen, aware, and mindful, rid of desire and aversion for the world. This is how we can live as our own island, our own refuge, with no other refuge. That is how the teaching is our island and our refuge, with no other refuge. The Buddha says, whether now or after I've passed, any who shall live as their own island, their own refuge, with no other refuge, with the Dhamma as their island and their refuge, those mendicants of mine who want to train shall be among the best of the best. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. What an encouragement for us. What a simple and yet profound teaching. This is the way to go. Nikaya no mago. This is the one way. This is the direct path of practice. So how beautiful. And I feel in this sutta we learn some amazing things. This episode in the Buddha's life, so touching, so poignant. And his attitude towards leadership and the need or the not need for it. And then at the end, he tells us, we are the island. We are the teacher. We are the guide for ourselves. It's like we are empowered by this Dharma. Each one of us. We're both empowered and also, isn't it, we have this responsibility. It's almost a bit scary sometimes to recognize that it's up to us, each one of us, to put these teachings into practice. So I hope you enjoyed this sutta. It's kind of a historical sutta, but full of great Dharma that is so worthy of our attention. And I'd like to invite everyone. Thank you, Kate, for this, because we can all contemplate, consider Sati Sampajanya. What does it mean? How do we experience it right now? Thanks, everyone. We'll finish with a closing homage. The three refuges, Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Araham Sama Sambuddha Bhagavan Buddham Bhagavantam Abhivademi. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang Namasami. Supatipano Bhagavato Sangha Sangho Sangha Nama.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aya.
Thank you, Aya. That was wonderful.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Aya.
Sadhu, 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 anumodami.